Hey everybody and welcome to Indie Direct. And finally, I actually have one of the games that was on my wish list finally come out, and it's taking me a week to actually finish it. So I'm sorry if it's going to be a little bit later than the next day. This was actually an extremely long game, and I'm so excited and so happy to actually do this review for this game. And it's Someday You'll Return. Now, Someday You'll Return is a story-driven psychological horror game where you play as Daniel, who is actually looking for his missing daughter. So he goes back to the woods that he swore he would never return again to find her because that's where her location was said to be. But as he's finding his daughter, he ends up running into a couple people who end up trying to help him find his daughter. And you soon find out going through this game that there is something more to it. It's not more or less you trying to find your daughter. It's trying to understand Daniel's mistakes and flaws, and going through all the memories and going through all of Stella, his daughter's memories. It's a compelling story that's to this game. And I was actually going to do this review before I finished the game because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get this out in a timely manner. So luckily I pushed through like the last 6 hours of this game today, and I'm glad I did because a lot of the story came together phenomenally towards the end. I'm not going to give much detail to it, but the story to it wrapped up so nicely and had such a deep impact that I was really surprised, because in the beginning it seemed very straightforward. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot going for it, and maybe it was just like, oh, I'm going to find my daughter. But then layer upon layer started to add on, and this world building and the way that they had actually shown Daniel in this light of his flaws and his issues that he had had with his family, it came together phenomenally. And I'm so happy that I finished this game before I did this review. But let's jump into gameplay, graphics, sound design, everything like that real quick. Simple enough graphics. When you first start this game up and you start walking through the forest, this is a beautiful looking game. I loved walking through the forest. I loved walking through all the scenarios that you had to go through. The graphics are hit or miss in some locations. Being on the floor of the forest, walking around and seeing all the foliage, it is a fantastic sight. The graphics look beautiful. You almost seem like you're actually in this forest. But on certain high vistas that you would get to, you would look out upon the vista and you would see maybe just a repeat of the same tree, and it kind of takes you out a little bit. But the vistas are not really something that you're going to be on all the time. You're mostly going to be walking through the forest, walking through these bunkers. That's what you're going to be doing. And those sections that are in the game were really well done, really well rendered, and I was happy with that. Now, the mechanics in this game are actually quite a handful and can be, honestly, quite overbearing. I mean, you have between the normal traversal, you also don't have a map HUD, so you're going to have to look at the maps located around the map to figure out what trail you need to accurately take, which sometimes can be a little nerve-wracking when you lose a trail and you can't see a trail very clearly, so you're trying to find it. It's easy to kind of go off the path, but I think that's more or less a choice in design for them. You also have herbalism, where you're collecting these herbs to where you can actually craft these certain different types of potions that will help you in certain scenarios. You also have climbing, where climbing would be implemented in most of the game, is basically a hand-to-hand puzzle platforming, if you could really think of it that way. And in the beginning of it, it seemed like a really good idea, and I really liked the idea of it. But going through the game later on and getting into the more and more of it, I feel like they put the climbing mechanic in there too often, and it became more or less not just an interesting caveat to the game, it became a repetitive part of the game. And that kind of, whenever I saw one, I was like, oh great, here we go again. But that could, again, just be me. There's also stealth mechanics. Now, To me, I'm not a very big stealth person. I don't like the stealth stuff, especially in a lot of games, because I feel like the purpose for a stealth sequence is to slow the game down and make it longer than what it has to be, takes away from the story, and just tries to put you in one spot for longer than what you really want to be. Luckily, though, those sections in this game were, I think there's only like 4 in the game, and they were very short. So I was really happy about that, but when I did run into them, they were a nuisance to me, and I wasn't, ecstatic to see them. Now, sound design in this game was done really well. I honestly enjoyed the soundtrack and the ambiance that was in this game. There was music where there needed to be music. There was no music where it didn't need to be. And spending the times in the forest and hearing these birds and all the rustling and the pigs, it was a very, very nice, enjoyable soundtrack and ambience that really immersed me into it. Also, while going through this game and exploring the forest that you're walking through, there are plenty of collectibles that you can go through and find. There's hidden treasures that you can collect and multiple stories and world building, pieces of paper that you can find and read that really just fill out this world. And I think one of the interesting ones is when you go through and you find these landmarks, you'll find a QR code. And just out of curiosity, I was like, well, hey, let me check out this QR code. And the QR code genuinely takes you to I think it's a Czechoslovakian map site, but it will take you directly to where you're at on the map. And it's showing you in the real world where this forest is and what location you're actually looking at. And I really thought this was a very unique thing to add into the game. They could have easily left that out, but to actually have that in the game, and maybe people who do play this would be like, I kind of want to go see this forest. And they now have a location to where exactly this forest is. And it's just an interesting thing to see that, hey, here you are in game. This is where it is in the real world. So, I don't know. To me, that was really interesting. But a few other negatives that I did find, there were a few small glitches in the game. Some doing with sound, honestly. Like when I was being chased by a certain creature, I would hear the music. I wouldn't be quite sure if I had gotten away with them one time because the music was continuing to play in that situation. And when I realized at that point that the music had glitched and it was just basically repeating itself over, I had to back out into the main menu and restart, which is not much of a big deal. Loading times aren't long in this game, but I just noticed that that was a small glitch. And there was also problems with if I had died in a certain area, reloading put me into a halfway point between sections. So if I was to collect something and something was supposed to happen, by the time I loaded back in, that thing would happen, but I hadn't grabbed the item and I couldn't grab the item and continue. And again, a simple go to the menu, continue would have fixed everything, and it wasn't much of an issue. But these are the things that I did see when I was playing the game. One other, I guess, kind of negative to me, at least, is level design. Now, level design to me, usually, of course, you always want to have a level design to where you're pointing the player in the direct way that you're wanting them to go all the time. Now, for the forest section, I understand. They want you to get lost because that is the premise of that point. But certain areas where they have scripted events that are going on and they're trying to push you in a certain area, their level design seems to be a little off on that side, because there were multiple times where, during a scripted event, I was like, oh my gosh, where am I supposed to go? I would go one way and sit there and look at it and go, this is where I need to go. And then I die and then realize, oh, wait, no, hold on, it's behind me. And usually good level design doesn't require a player to die before they realize where they're supposed to go. And that happened a handful of times, and it was a little frustrating, but I don't know if that was their true intentions. I don't know if that's what they were wanting, was a little bit of confusion and still some of that, lost perception even through their scripted events. But to me, I find if you're wanting a scripted event, you definitely want to make sure that your level design is meant for them to continue forward no matter what, without having to worry, without having to get lost, without getting frustrated. But that could be what they were wanting you to do, was to be frustrated. But that really is all the negatives to it. Now, I mean, I can sit here and harp on the negatives of the game, but these were a lot less glitchy than what most EA games I see. But, I mean, all in all, I'm really glad that I waited to do this review until I actually finished the game, because a lot of the story actually comes together and wraps up in a very nice package right at the end. I think it's like the last hour, hour and a half of the game. And I'm so glad that I waited, because it was a fantastic experience. It was a fantastic story. You know, they call it a psychological horror, but to me, I wouldn't find it that way. I'd find it more of a suspense game, because nothing there really had me scared, had me worried, but it was something that I was on the edge of my seat, worrying about, oh, what is this? Oh, what's this gonna happen? What's the purpose of this? But I could see some people maybe getting scared in some sections. I don't know. But hey guys, if you're interested in the game, I'm gonna leave a link down below. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching, guys. You know, leave a like if you liked the video, and if you haven't subscribed already, we're probably gonna go back to our normal sessions now, since everything's kind of letting up. So it should be Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, hopefully. But if you are interested in looking at more games like that, just hit subscribe. And as always, guys, I'll see you in the next video, and have fun. Bye.